Welcome to the film analysis. Today with Hatari by Howard Hawks. Three Western fans meet and argue about which Western is the best. One says High Noon. The second says Rio Bravo. The third finally says no, it's The Searchers. Then a fourth joins in and exclaims Hatari. Everyone immediately agrees, yes, Hatari is the most beautiful Western. The joke, Hatari is not a Western at all, if only because the film is set in East Africa. The film was released in 1962 and is set roughly in this period. For 2.5 hours we follow life in a big game trapping center. Wild animals such as giraffes, elephants, zebras and rhinos are hunted but not killed. They are to be caught and later sold to zoos. People go hunting in jeeps to capture the animals. The group is a colorful mix, as can be seen from the names: Sean Mercer, Kurt Müller, Anna Maria D'Alessandro, Charles Moret, Brandy Delacour, Luis Francisco Garcia Lopez. Furthermore, a New Yorker by the name of Pockets, another is simply called the Indian. However, the Italian and French names are anglicized. D'Alessandro becomes Dallas and Charles becomes Chips. This composition is programmatic in that all people are peacefully united here, regardless of where they come from. The American idea: all immigrants come to this country, different identities, but somehow live well together. However, the film features one exception. This multiculturalism has a blind spot. The African tribes are portrayed in an exoticizing and stereotypical way. And the other black people in the film are only servants, functioning merely in this position and having nothing else to say apart from the titular exclamation Hatari. While no longer being slaves, they remain subordinates. Moreover, all this means diversity in unity, and this unity is an American one. The head of this group is Sean Mercer, played by none other than John Wayne. The suspense dramaturgy of this film fascinates. The title Hatari translates as danger, but this is a feint. Howard Hawks is a director who doesn't want to lure his viewers with action. His visual language radiates serenity, and although the respective plots are told, it's basically about moods. There are almost sacred moments in cinema when a song is sung and everyone just stands there all together, just enjoying the moment. It's the same in the Hawks westerns Rio Bravo or El Dorado. Hatari frees itself almost completely from the usual suspense narratives. Anyone watching the film for the first time will think after 40 minutes that the film is taking its time, but soon the big conflict will emerge. But it doesn't. It just goes on like this. The next 2 hours will pass like this, but you don't want it to end. Almost nothing happens, and yet somehow everything does. At the beginning we see a rhino hunt, which seriously ensures the Indian. At the hospital everyone is waiting for the doctor's diagnosis, but the mood is already cheerful again. Hawks works in some humor here. The Indian will make it, as we find out soon. During the daily hunt, the beautiful landscapes take center stage. Hardly any dicey situations occur. Baby elephants trample after Brady, the camp's most beautiful woman, to Henry Mancini's famous music. Delicate hints of love stories develop, and of course, and somewhere along the line, the two handsome young men, Kurt and Chips, are rivals, both wanting to win Brandy's love. But who does the most beautiful woman in the camp end up with? John Wayne, of course. Yes, that's how it was back then. What about Chips and Kurt? Interestingly, they went to Paris together, having realized they had a mutual acquaintance there, as it's told. Just one? Yes, they go half and half. The implication is quite typical of the classical Hollywood film. It concerns homoeroticism, of course, and Paris is the place of free love. The antagonism between the two men is an opportunity to mark a strong libidinal bond between the two without having to be explicit. Remarkable insofar as it shows once again that especially when homosexuality is not explicit, it can be implicitly staged in a much more interesting way. As I said, the Indian can leave the hospital at some point. He limps, has to walk with a stick, and reminds us a little of Captain Ahab from Moby Dick. In Melville's novel, the whale stands for Leviathan, which can be interpreted as God or, with Thomas Hobbes, as the all-powerful state. The rhinoceros in Hatari could have a similar symbolic power, but these existential or state-supporting battles are no longer fought in Hawkes's film. They have already been won. Civilization has triumphed, and the Indian is by no means vengeful like Ahab. He wants to postpone the rhino hunt for the time being. In Rio Bravo and El Dorado, too, the civilizing process is already well advanced. But Hatari is the most peaceful Western because there is no enemy at all. But be careful, what does that mean if there is no enemy? Yes, people are civilized, that is tamed, just as animals are domesticated. We should not forget the analogy. Animals captured and taken to zoos represents Indians put on reservations. The peace and serenity of Hatari therefore deceive precisely because the actual dark side appears so harmless. Hatari is a Western as wilderness and civilization are shifted to Africa. John Wayne plays that overdetermined, you naturally must see the cowboy first and foremost. He behaves like one and is almost dressed like a real cowboy. The jeeps have become a substitute for horses, and the hunters still have a relationship with the wildlife, but they are now well protected. They are paid. They may not yet live in a concrete house, but they no longer live in a hut either. But what is behind Howard Hawks' decision to relocate the Western to Africa? In 1893, the American historian Frederick Jackson Turner published his famous essay, The Significance of the Frontier in American History. In it, he asks himself why America is the way it is. He states that it is because of the ever-possible westward shift of the frontier. As it represents a vast country, it has always been possible to expand further and further. It was always possible to civilize a piece of wilderness. This favored free trade as well as individualism and democracy. In the film, we see these three key points again. Firstly, there is the trade in animals. Then we are dealing exclusively with individualists. And finally, votes. For example, we see a vote on whether to adopt a baby elephant, and John Wayne has to bow to the majority. 2 years before Turner's essay was published, the American Census Bureau declared the colonization of the West complete. A frontier line, a line between settlement and wilderness, no longer existed. The famous westerns in film history are therefore set before 1891, and the battle between cowboys and Indians, or the cavalry and the Indians, took place earlier. The pioneer westerns that deal with the arduous settlement, such as Shane, are also set earlier. Turner's frontier thesis has been discussed and reinterpreted by historians throughout the 20th century. Matthias Wächter has devoted a major study to this debate, the invention of the American West. In this study, Wächter traces the debate through the decades. Some historians apply Turner's theory globally, not limiting it to America alone. Before 1891, the American government hardly interfered in world affairs. It remained neutral and did not intervene. Exactly what changed in the 20th century. The frontier narrative is complete in America, but not in the whole world. It can be extended. It is as if civilization is now being extended to other countries. In 1955, the historian William Appleman Williams published the essay The Frontier Thesis and American Foreign Policy. And Wächter summarizes Williams: the notion conveyed by the frontier thesis that the future well-being of the United States depended inseparably on progressive imperial expansion was, in Williams's view, at the root of American foreign policy in the 20th century. End of quote. And he then also quotes Williams. The letter says, Turnerism, meanwhile, retained its vigor during these years. The Truman Doctrine seemed an almost classic statement of the thesis that the security and well-being of the United States depended upon the successful execution of America's unique mission to defend and extend the frontier to democracy throughout the world. End of quote. We find a transfer of this very frontier thesis by Turner in Hatari. In East Africa, the land is still vast, not everything has been colonized yet. An encounter with the wilderness, which can be domesticated and civilized, is still possible. As peaceful and beautiful as Hatari undoubtedly is, it carries an imperial and colonialist strategy, precisely due to this film's Western character, which is entirely in line with American foreign policy at the time. In Hatari, we wonderfully see how the light, idyllic films in particular are steeped in ideology. There are no harmless films unless we watch but don't see. It would be nice if you would like to support the film analysis financially. You can do so via my bank account or PayPal. Also, you can find me on Patreon. Thank you very much.